This episode of Dirty Linen is proudly supported by Pepe Saya Australian Cultured Butter, batch churned from single origin cream.
When we were initially forecasting and predicting how things were going to go, because seltzer hadn't really kicked off in Australia then, we had a feeling that within 3 years we'd probably be producing as much seltzer as we would be beer. But 6 months in, and we're producing more seltzer than beer.
This week on Dirty Linen, we continue to talk to people who are optimistic about all the good things that are going on. They're creating change, they're creating fun, they're creating good moments. One of those people is Chris Hysted-Adams from Dog Brewing. He works in new product development for Dog and Fizzer, which is a seltzer. Now, Chris, welcome to Dirty Linen. I'm thrilled to have you on the show.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
I have to say, I'm one of those people that is still a little bit sceptical about seltzer.
That's fair. My to put it into perspective, I'm a bit of a cocktail nonce from way back, so it took me a while to get my head around, but now I'm all about it.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. So I'd love just to hear a little bit about you and about your journey. Bring us up to date, because I know that you worked at one of Melbourne's favourite bars, Black Pearl, for a long time. So tell us how you come to be at Dog.
Well, it was kind of a matter of necessity for me, I suppose. So Black Pearl, I was there for just over 10 years. We did some great things there, which was awesome. And then my wife and I, we had a little boy, and that kind of meant that 3 a.m. closes and getting into bed at 5 a.m. Wasn't something I could really do anymore. So I started looking around for some other jobs and was really stoked to see that Dog World was opening up here in Preston, where we are today, and managed to come on board as part of the build team for here and the venue manager. And kind of over the last, year and a bit, with everything else that's gone on, my role's changed and moved into this new product development stuff.
Okay, so Dog Brewing is an independent brewer in Melbourne, and I have to say Dog World is just so ace. It is so crazy, but so wonderful. I would love you just to describe it, but also can you explain to me how on earth you came up with such madness?
I won't take full responsibility for coming up with it, because that would be Josh, who's one of our founders. We just wanted to come up with a venue that wasn't like your traditional craft beer venue that meant only people who really enjoyed craft beer could go there and drink. We really wanted it to be, we didn't want to rule them out, obviously, but we also wanted people who drink wine to be excited about it, people who drink cocktails to be excited about it, people who were just looking to have a good time to be excited about it. And, also we've all got kind of young families, so something that was family appropriate as well was great. But yeah, we just wanted to do something that was completely inclusive and just made sure that everything that you tasted was delicious and also had a pretty ridiculous kind of setting as well.
Well, yeah. So the setting, it's just, I just cannot imagine anybody walking in there for the first time and not smiling and just going, what on earth, where have I landed? So I'll try to describe it and you can correct me. It's like this massive sort of, I guess, like a massive big warehousey shed kind of space, but inside it there's all different levels, and the feature, I guess, is a large lake or pool.
We like to call it a lagoon.
I'm sorry, a lagoon.
No, that's okay.
Yeah. It's got a tropical kind of vibe, but you are in Preston, which is, and it's the back blocks of Preston, so it's not, there's nothing else around. You have to make a special trip there. It's got this sort of decorative lagoon, and then it's got all these other little rooms, like loungy rooms, and like a big bar area, elevated areas where you can sort of look over things. It's just like a fun palace.
Yeah. I suppose that's what we were going for. But I suppose, like you mentioned just then, that we are in the doldrums of northern Preston. So we wanted to make sure it was a place that people wanted to come back to again and again. And, just having, 72 beer taps or 36 beer taps, I think it is, we've got here. That's easy to kind of go in, try the beers, but having another reason to come back, whether it's just the atmosphere, whether it's like the music that's on that night, whether you've discovered that there's a pinball room here and like that's been decked out into a full games room now. We've had a hidden tiki bar as well that was hiding around the corner that not many people knew about near the waterfall. But just making sure there was reasons to come back, and just always something new to discover every time you came back, whether it was, a new room or a new beer that we'd released.
Yeah, interesting. So tell us about new product development and how that works. Are you always looking to develop something new? Are you following trends? Are you trying to create new sensations? What do you do? There's probably a few different ways that it comes about. I think the fact that both our venues were closed for a substantial period of time kind of fast-tracked a fair bit of it, because we all had some pretty idle hands. So that's when it was during like the first lockdown, we started working on the fizz range of seltzers. But then we've also got some other cool stuff that we've been working on too, like these new subscription boxes, because a lot more people seem to be, drinking at home, and not heaps of people. Well, so it's not the right way to put it, but a lot of people still aren't going out as much as they used to in years past. So we've been doing these really cool subscription boxes where you get a couple of like brewery exclusive beers that you can only get within the boxes or in the venues. And there's a whole bunch of other little bells and whistles that we throw with them, and we're theming them. And so we're putting some pretty wacky, weird beers and ideas into those as well. So let's talk about the seltzer. I guess for, probably some people aren't really aware of it. So go back to the 101, like what is it? Why is it a thing?
Boozy mineral water is probably the easiest way to describe it. So it's compared to like, your traditional RTDs that are really sugar laden or anything like that. It's a lot cleaner, a lot crisper, in this kind of age of modern wellness and that as well. There's a few kind of perceived health benefits to it in terms of like lower calories, lower carbs, low gluten, all of that kind of stuff that a lot of people are interested in. But what we found at the start, like we found them really boring when we first kind of started working on it.
Even as you talk about it, it sounds boring.
It sounds super boring, doesn't it? Like when you talk about other things, whether it's like wine or cocktails, you're talking about like big, bold flavors. You're talking about like, incredible palate length and all of this stuff, whereas this is just designed to be clean and fresh and super easy to drink. And yeah, when we tried a lot of other products out there, like during that first lockdown, we were completely underwhelmed by it. But we could have gotten down by that and just run about. But the way we looked at it was it meant there was a really great opportunity there to come up with some more fun liquid and stuff that had a bit more of a pronounced profile to it. So yeah, it was a great process for us all to go through and really work on it. So instead of just like singular flavors, we've been doing some more like nostalgic kind of inspired ones, like one that's Tropical Crush. The easiest way to describe it is like anything that was orange when you were a kid. So like you think like orange icy poles or like tropical cordial, anything like that. But we've just removed all of that sugar out of it. So it finishes, the carbonation of it really cleans it up nicely. So it's something, you could go for a picnic in a park, take a 6-pack with you and very easily, leave without anything left in your bag.
And what's the alcohol element?
Yeah, so it's a brewed product, the one that we make. So we ferment it. So it is literally just like alcohol. We produce it exactly the same as a beer. That's how we make it. There's some other brands out there they'll mix spirits in with soda water and all of that. But we're a brewery, so we figured we'd kind of stick to what we knew.
And like, who's it popular with?
We found not who we originally thought it was going to be. We thought it'd be a lot of like the millennial crowd that'd be around it, which there is. But what we've been really interested in finding, like the more booze nerds have actually been really getting into it as well. One of our flavors, strawberries and cream, which sounds kind of counterintuitive to light, fresh, crisp, refreshing, bubbly liquid. We've found just like all are like really good wine friends. You know, like guys from Bar Liberty, some of the crew up at PNV are just mad for like the strawberries and cream stuff because it's just got such a nostalgic kind of flavour to it for them.
That is really surprising to me.
Yeah, you're telling me. It's just that when Robbie, one of our guys up in Sydney, told me that they were just flying through strawberries and cream, but it's like all somms and bartenders are all about that, which I thought would be like the least interesting flavour for them.
So do you think it's just the way that you guys are making it that means it's got that interest? Is it the flavours that you're choosing, or is it that brewing process?
Not to detract from our brewing team, who did a fantastic job, but I suppose as part of being a seltzer is that the base is it's really neutral because it is like that kind of soda water, mineral water kind of feeling to it. So I think definitely like the concepts behind them. We've just always wanted to have a bit more fun with it instead of just putting out like a low carb lemon flavour. You know, it just kind of sounded really boring and not really something that we were interested in doing, to be honest.
Sure. And so tell me about the different satisfactions between, or first of all, I just love to talk a bit about the Black Pearl days and what you love about cocktails. Like, what are the satisfactions of cocktail creation?
Well, things taste good. That's great. I'm a bit of a junkie for flavour, which is good. But I did a degree in creative advertising way back at RMIT, and one of the things there was like you'd work on something for so long. Like, you know, you'd get your brief, you'd put the campaign together, and then take it to client, and, you know, the feedback could be positive, it could be negative, but, you know, it could take place over the course of like 6 to 8 weeks. But if I was to be really selfish about one of the great things about like bartending and making cocktails is you can see like an instant response to something you've made for someone, whether that's good or bad. But you know where you stand straight away with it, which I think is really, really cool. And you know straight away whether you've made someone's night better or worse.
Yeah. And what about the culture of cocktail bars? Like, I mean, you mentioned that the 3 a.m. finishes were not really ideal for family life, but what kind of, just like, do you think that there's a different culture in cocktail bars than, let's say, in craft brew venues?
Not from my experience. I've found like both, for want of a better term, like scenes or industries are both very welcoming, I think, and there's like a really good, what's the word for it? Like a comradeship around it. So, and like other people's successes is your success as well. So if people are getting into craft cocktails or, you know, nerdy old classics, that's great because, you know, people might be at another bar and, you know, you don't only drink at one bar, do you? Like you want to go around and check out other bars and other drinks and that. So if other people are getting people into these things, I think it's only a win. And it's the exact same thing with beer and seltzer. Like if people are looking to explore new liquids and new drinks, I think it's just great. Yeah.
And what about, I mean, I guess now in your role where you're doing product development, you don't have that instantaneous feedback like you had when you're making somebody a cocktail. How are you finding this process?
It's good. It was initially terrifying, just because there's a difference between, you know, putting 90 mils of Negroni over a bar top and signing off 20,000 litres of liquid before it goes into cans. But no, it's been great. We've kind of created our own process for making it, which involves just getting people involved like the whole way through from the start. So we're testing it around amongst ourselves. You know, we're really lucky that we've got the venue here. So we've got all our hospitality staff that will ask them if they want to taste it and give us feedback and all that. Like, I don't think people really know around here how much impact they've had on the final direction of it. But just tiny little things that, like, you know, one of the bartenders might say about it will give you a little tweak or a way to tweak the recipe. But I suppose that gratification is a little bit different, but it's really cool when you walk into like a bottle shop or something like that and you see one of those products on the shelf. I think it's really cool. That's something I've never really experienced up until now. But yeah, it's great. You're just kind of like, oh, that's there in the fridge now and people can buy it. How weird's that?
Yeah, very cool. So you're in like product creation, wholesaling, and also hospitality with the venues. Can you talk about the different challenges in those businesses and particularly through the pandemic? Like, how did you manage those different areas?
Yeah, I suppose if anything, we're pretty lucky to have both of those like through the pandemic, because, you know, if we were just hospitality, we would have been completely in the weeds, because the guys made a pact basically to not lay off any full-time staff, which was awesome. So we just kind of found ways to reappropriate what we did throughout our working weeks, whether that was, you know, a lot of the hospitality team and like the kitchen staff especially. We were out doing deliveries because we'd kind of turned straight into a delivery model, whether that was just the beers and seltzers or whether it was food, anything like that. It also we had a few guys out on the canning line in the brewery, all of that. So it was really, really interesting. And if anything, like, I think silver linings, it kind of gave us exposure to other areas of the business as well. Which is something we wouldn't have had otherwise, yeah. You
mean like as individual workers, you got to see different aspects of the business?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that is always going to be good, isn't it? To have that appreciation of, the different strands of a business.
Yeah, and instead of just, you know, a beer coming out and, you know, it gets launched and the staff are just pouring it, you know, they kind of see like which tank it was made from. And, you know, it's just these little connections that, you know, it gives us more to talk about and more to kind of take on board with it. And especially if you're on a canning run, you're there for like 7-8 hours. This is before we installed our fancy new canning machine, but you're putting together cases upon cases and, like, you know, hundreds of cases of beer. So it gives you a greater appreciation, definitely, for how it's put together.
Yeah, 100%. One of the main conversations that I'm having with anybody working in any kind of hospitality business is staffing. And I mean, that's amazing that you managed to hang on to all of your full-time staff, but I'm sure there are a lot of other people that make up the picture. How are you finding restaffing after lockdown? I'd be naive to say we weren't struggling to find more people. We've kind of moved to more of a model using, you know, like phone ordering through little like magical hockey pucks on our tables and stuff like that. So like portal ordering, which is something, especially like from an old school hospo perspective, we were like, it took a lot of convincing to get us around that. But we just kept trying to work out, you know, it's like robots are taking our jobs and all this kind of stuff. But the way we looked at it and we kind of put together our new service model was then it effectively meant that we could give better service, even though there's less people there, when, you know, you don't have to worry about a table of 10 and who's eating what, and, you know, you've got to write it down and there's, you know, so much going on in your head. Basically everyone can host now, which I think is really, really cool. And it was something I wasn't expecting at the start because I was not for it. But, you know, people and like all our great staff who have come back and we're lucky enough to have back, they can do what they're best at. And that's really just showing people a great time and not having to worry about, you know, taking orders or anything like that. They can be there answering questions about, you know, the food or sharing random stories about the beer, because there's plenty of those floating about. But yeah, and the way we see it means we can give people actually a better time. And it's kind of made it very interesting because we are running on less staff, but like you do need more during those peak periods. But yeah, we just kind of got to do what we can at the moment. This episode of Dirty Linen is proudly supported by Pepe Sayer Australian Cultured Butter, batch churned from single origin cream.
We're doing it for flavour. That's all we care about, the best tasting butter that we can make. So we see big opportunity there because majority of people that buy our butter, they'll be standing right next to me at the farmers markets and go, I'll buy some salted butter for my bread, but I'm making a cake. I'll go get some supermarket unsalted butter for that. And I'm like, you make a cake out of this unsalted butter, it'll change your life. because it's so rich and it's got its own flavour complexity. And the unknown about cultured butter is as soon as you heat it up, the flavours are just releasing.
For more information, go to pepisaya.com.au. You, I guess, didn't go down the path of advertising, which you'd, done a degree in. You moved more into hospitality. I mean, why did you do that, and why do you think more Australians don't follow that path?
I don't know. There's probably a bit of a stigma around the hospitality industry, but in terms of like what went on in my head, the change, I suppose, from going into advertising when I was working at a winery called Yering Station back home, and got to work the cellar door there, and you basically just, very crudely put, you talk to people about wine all day and pour them tastings. And one thing that, even though it was part of the hospitality industry, the thing that really drew me to it though was like those stories about how it's made, the processes, any of the certain vineyards or the people behind them, and sharing those stories was what really drew me to it. And then I was drinking at Pearl, and they had a really similar kind of thing going on there with the way they'd talk about spirits or cocktails. And I got attracted to the exact same thing there, and it was a whole different new world. And, like the blinkers just kind of keep going further and further back as you're discovering all of these cool things, like around like whether it's different cocktails, who made them. Like you can imagine the amount of different stories there are around cocktails. There's one about, I think there's like these, the founding fathers of the States, they put together a punch, but it was actually served in a fountain in the garden. So you can imagine how much liquid's got to be put together to actually make that work. And then they had someone floating about in a small rowboat actually going around ladling drinks out to all the guests. And the fact that we could access that recipe and then make a smaller serve of it for someone and tell them that story, I found that really, really cool. And I suppose the actual lifestyle of the hospitality and all of that around it, the other kind of fringe benefits of that lifestyle were just kind of second to that.
I mean, surely you've got to get people paddling a boat around the lagoon at Moondog World, ladling out drinks to people at some point.
Yeah, we'll have to get some races going on in there or something. Good beer week's coming up, so maybe we can.
I think you should. You mentioned, the family-friendly hours and working in bars. It's always a tricky one for people in hospitality. Do you see any solution for that? Any way around combining, family life with the hours in hospitality?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with just it's where you want to spend your time. And that's where I found initially the challenges, because I'd been working that gig for so long, it just kind of becomes second nature, right? And what drives the way your life kind of, like how it runs day to day. But, having like a family and trying to balance that, I suppose for me was, you might knock off, but instead of hanging around and having 2 or 3 beers after work, you'd just go straight home, and you still might only be getting that 6 hours sleep or 5 hours sleep, whatever it is. But you're getting up, you're fresher, you're not hungover or anything like that. But it's just, you've just got to decide, I suppose, where you want to put your effort and your time.
Do you think that the culture in hospitality has changed over the years that you've been involved, where that is more acceptable? Like, people understand that your whole world might not begin and end with the bar that you're working at?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think, and dramatically so in the last few years as well.
Yeah. What do you think's brought that on? Is it just a maturity in the industry, or is it just people drawing lines in the sand? Why would it have changed?
I think it's all of that. Like it's, I'm sure there's still people in there that are really enjoying the lifestyle, but I think people just kind of also enjoy spending time with each other outside of work. And that was kind of one thing that we would actually do after work is like, okay, tonight, no knockoffs. Like I'd much rather just go out with you for brunch tomorrow or something like that, and actually have some daylight, have a coffee, something like that, instead of just hanging around and whinging about the service that had just been. So just trying to to have some more positive kind of experiences with your buddies.
Yeah, that is so interesting. I think one thing...
We had worked together for a very long time, so we're probably looking for something to shake things up.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, it just seems really smart. It's like, yeah, let's still catch up. Let's still have that social time, but let's we don't need to, let's
do it in the daylight.
Do it in daylight, yeah. Do you reckon the pandemic was a good time for you guys overall?
I would say it's a double-edged sword. Positives were that we had time to create a lot of really cool new stuff. And like for me, it also meant like a lot of great family time, but obviously there were some negatives there in terms of like laying off staff and all of that. And, financially we're still recovering. But it's great being able to have our venues back open and having people in here now. So we're just up at 600 capacity now of what was originally like 720. So like we're pretty close, but I think the way people go out now has definitely changed. It still blows my mind that I don't know if you've had a similar experience like going out. I think I went to a pub or something recently and it was just packed and it just felt so weird and unnerving because just hadn't done it for so long. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I think things are on the up. I think it's good. Yeah.
So are you still sensing, I mean, you mentioned that a lot of people are still, getting the beer to drink at home. But do you feel like the people that do come out, there is still a bit of a reticence or a nervousness to party like they used to?
I think a little bit, yeah. But probably more for like older crowds, I think. Like younger guys are just coming out. Like when we put on some of our DJ nights, the kids love coming around. Sorry, I shouldn't say kids. Like a younger crew just really love coming out here and embracing what we've got on offer now.
So you sound sort of cautiously optimistic. What do you think there is to be optimistic about at the moment?
I think it's just like being able to have fun again, I think is such a big part of it. I feel like the last year you felt very cautious. Like personally, like for myself, like my son has cystic fibrosis, so we were doubly cautious throughout all of that. But then I suppose the silver lining of that is like lockdown, he's never been healthier because he hasn't been exposed to anything. So, you just kind of, even though we were being cautious and we were being careful, and when I was out doing deliveries for Moondog down in Abbotsford, I was based down there for like part of the first lockdown. It just felt like everyone was really treading around on eggshells. Like you'd see your friends, they'd come by to pick up a 6-pack, but you couldn't give them a hug and all of that kind of stuff. But now you can, and it's such a small thing, but I remember a buddy of mine, Matt, came to OG once and we were just talking to each other, but it was just like this weird dynamic because you're, 1.5 meters away from each other. You haven't seen each other for ages and you're having these really kind of intimate conversations, but it's outside and you've got to speak a bit louder because you're so far away from each other and all of that. Whereas now it's just like, hey, we can get like 10 of us together. We can get all the kids together and we can go to the park and we can actually have a hug and talk to each other, which is great about like, that's personally, I suppose in terms of like what we're doing at Moondog, like the fizzer seltzers have taken off dramatically. Like we were far out when we were initially forecasting and predicting how things were going to go, like, because seltzer hadn't really kicked off in Australia then. Like we had a feeling that within like 3 years we'd probably be producing as much seltzer as we would be beer. But 6 months in and we're producing more seltzer than beer just at the moment. That's only after 6 months. Yeah.
That is really unexpected. I'm really surprised. I'm going to give it another go. I'm going to try that strawberries and cream one. Is that the flavour? Okay, that's the flavour the cool people have. I'll try that. Chris, it's really full on that your son has got cystic fibrosis. I mean, that is such a severe, condition. And as I don't know that much about it, but I know it really affects the lungs, and some people end up having lung transplants to help manage it. I'm assuming that would have put him at particular risk with COVID, right?
Yeah. So we're even now, his team at the Children's Hospital, we don't they don't go in for their appointments. So it's still all done via telehealth.
Wow.
Which is really interesting, right? But yeah, again, that silver lining is that even though, we haven't been able to socialise as much or anything like that, he has never been healthier. For the last year, he's effectively been off most of the meds he'd normally be on to kind of keep him safe from any external germs and stuff like that. So
that's simply because of that lack of contact with the outside world. Is that why? Yeah,
and you're not going around to parks, and he's not licking pavements and going down slides face first and all of that. So just general kid stuff, but it's just a lot easier to control what he's exposed to at home. Yeah.
Wow. So I mean, how does that make you think about managing his condition or his health needs in the future?
No, we're really confident about it. The team he's got at the Children's Hospital at ACE, we've kind of got our heads around it now, which is good as well. And without delving into it too much, we've just found our normal. So, and that's, it's very easy to get down about it all, but what's that really going to do for him? We've just kind of got to, work out the best way to get around all of that, but also bring up a lovely child as well. And it's not something we really want to define him either. It should hopefully just be something he doesn't have to worry about too much.
Yeah, amazing. I know that you celebrated his birthday late last week. What was
Correct.
Was it a great party?
It was a great party. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the PJ masks.
You'll have to educate me.
It's like a children's show where these three kids, when they go to bed, they turn into superheroes and they save the world during the night time. So we had a bunch of kids over, and they were just messing around on the trampoline. They were all dressed up as the PJ masks, the heroes. Caitlin, my wife, and I, we dressed up as a couple of the villains or the baddies from the show. So they all took great pride in taking us down and doing a few stacks on the tram, which was pretty funny. But no, it was an absolute belter of a weekend. It was really, really cool.
Awesome. I'm really glad to hear it. Well, Chris, it's been fantastic to hear from you, to learn more about Moondog and about Fizz Seltzer, and indeed to get me over the line with getting back on the seltzer train and giving it another ride.
Yeah, if you're into grapefruit, we've just launched a grapefruit today as well. A little number called Pink Flamingo, which is delightful.
I do like a bit of winter citrus, so yeah, bring it on.
So did everyone. Well, so did the grown-ups at the third birthday party on the weekend. It was the first one to go. So, yeah,
love it.
All good.
All right, you take care. Thank you so much for the chat.
No problems. You too, hun. Thank you.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about. We spend a week thrashing around each issue, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.